I want everyone here, especially you students in the room, to imagine something for a second. Imagine who you are when you're not in school. Now, for many of us here, the last time we were really able to picture this was when we were about 5 years old, right before we had started kindergarten. And boy, has a lot changed since then. It's really tricky to prepare for a life outside of school when you haven't known one for so long. For those of us that plan on going to college, we often see a direct pathway from high school to college as our only option. And while in high school, we spend so much time worrying about how to do activities that will look best on our college application. So much time worrying about the average ACT score of this school or the acceptance rate of that one. We end up molding ourselves into these little college presents, perfectly wrapped with a bow to match. But what happens when we take away that pressure, when we stop trying to mold ourselves in such a way? What happens when we take time off of school and time on life? Well, that's exactly what I decided to do the spring of my senior year in high school. I deferred admission from Oberlin College, which meant that I had a seat reserved in the following year's class. And I took a route that was a little bit more unconventional for someone in my graduating class. Well, I did 3 things, actually. I first traveled around Nepal and India for 3 months, where I did backpacking and camping, staying with host families, living at a Buddhist monastery, all through a program called Where There Be Dragons. When I finished that up and came back to the United States, I moved to South Lake Tahoe, where I got my first full-time job working at a ski resort, and got to try out skiing, which I didn't really get to do much growing up here in flat Northwest Ohio. After I had finished up the ski season and saved up some money, I went on a 2.5-month solo backpacking trip around Europe, where I stayed with different friends and family, also kind strangers, and at hostels for the rest of the time. Now, I had an admittedly hard time feeling inspired in high school. I felt really crushed by this pressure to conform to the normative ideas of what it meant to be successful, all based on what I found to be what could help me get into a good school. We have this system that's really hardwired on a certain model of what it means to be successful. But what if that measurement doesn't feel right for you? Think about how different you are from the person sitting next to you, and then think about how different you are from any random high schooler in this country. How can we have one set of expectations for us all? What if you have a bud of inspiration inside of you that is just waiting to blossom, but it doesn't get the right amount of sunlight and water in the school setting? Well, I like to think that when I took my gap year, I gave myself that sunlight. I realized so much more about myself than I ever could have imagined, and as much as I would love to rave about the spectacular, extravagant moments that I had, like watching the sunrise over the Himalayas, or jumping into the ocean at night to realize that there's a trail of sparkling, glowing phytoplankton following my every movement, which unfortunately I don't have a picture of. The moments that were equally or even more powerful were the icky, the mundane, the challenging. Moments like picking leeches off of my feet while resting my tired bones after a long day of hiking. Or waking up at 4:30 in the morning to drive across a mountain snowstorm just to go work selling tickets for 8 hours. Or even just wandering a city all by myself and feeling so alone, yet so wrapped up in gratitude. I could go on forever about all of the things I learned from this experience, but I want to try to convey to you some of the biggest ones. First of all, there are so many ways for one person to be, and I am more capable than I ever imagined. You know, I didn't get a perfect score on my ACT, and that didn't feel good when I was in high school. But hey, I traveled for 2.5 months as a solo 18-year-old woman, and I think that's pretty cool. I am more strong than I ever imagined. I threw myself into these personally uncharted territories, and I navigated them. I felt the burn of my legs as I climbed mountains. I felt the struggle of my mind wandering as I tried to meditate. And I felt jitters come up from my body as I stepped off a train to a new city where I knew no one and tried to make friends. I learned from doing. No one ever teaches you how to communicate with people that don't share any spoken language with you. But I realized I'm more connected to everyone across the world than I ever imagined. I mean, I think it's really wonderful that as humans, we can figure out ways to communicate. We dance, we play, we smile, we share food, we look into each other's eyes. It's so comforting and invigorating all at the same time to realize this. Maybe the biggest lesson that I learned, though, was that saying yes to the unexpected, no matter what that unexpected is for you, could bring you so much more joy than you ever imagined. I am now in my 2nd semester at Oberlin College, and I am thriving. I feel rejuvenated and stimulated academically. I feel more comfortable socializing with people and living on my own than I ever did before. And taking all of these experiences with me every single day, I feel more rooted in the world than I ever did. But most of all, I'm trying to continue that lesson of striving for the unexpected and thinking in unexpected ways. So I want to bring this back to all of you by saying, if you want to go to college right after high school, that's great. I want you to do what feels right for you. But when I was in high school, I didn't know that this was really an option, and I really wanted to open your mind up to this. Logistically, you can apply to college like normal and then defer for a year like I did, or you can wait to apply to college until you're on your gap year. And also, taking a gap year can mean so many things. It doesn't have to look even remotely like what I did. You can do internships, get a job, volunteer, travel, learn a new skill, or cultivate a hobby that you have. And also know that there are so many online resources available to help you figure out how to talk to your parents about taking a gap year, how to plan your gap year. And there are also a lot of scholarships available to make this financially accessible. So I've always taken pride in having a little dose of unconventionality about me. But as far as gap years go, I would be so happy to see this become the conventional. So, who are you when you're not in school? Thank you.